What is up, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of Father Dynasty. I'm your fatherly host, Chu, here in the manhole, here to talk fatherhood, fantasy football, and everything in between. And with me today is a very special guest. He will let me know if New Haven Pizza does, in fact, have a 3-year window. Follow him on Twitter at JCJDynasty and check out his work as the co-host of the Dynasty Degens podcast, as well as his Substack Manifest Fantasy. JC, how are you doing, buddy?
Chu, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here, so thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and I assume ready to talk a little fatherhood and fantasy football, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole goal here, right? Fatherhood, fantasy football, and everything in between.
I think we could do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, say I've got a keep, trade, cut special for you. I got two topics for you, and then the bonus one as well. So, are you ready for the first one, though?
Yeah, let's get to it.
Let's do it. So, the first one, I myself living vicariously and even speaking in actual, through TV comedies, things that I grew up with, and basically just only speaking in those lines and that sort of thing. Showtime is about TV comedies. All three of these, I think you'd be a big fan of based on the Twitter, what you'd use, kind of interact like with media and that sort of thing. So the three I've got here to keep, trade, cut are It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Parks and Recreation, and The Ringer, The Office.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because keep, trade, cut, all three of those shows are fantastic, obviously, right? So they're all kind of in the same tier. So would you want to keep the most valuable show, or would you want to potentially trade the most valuable show but keep the show that you like the most? I think my favorite show of that group is The Office, so I'll keep The Office. I think I can trade It's Always Sunny because I think it has the most trade value. Yeah, I see the Dunder Mifflin clock up there. Yeah, so I think you're probably riding with me as well. And I love Parks and Rec. I mean, the same creator and stuff as The Office, but well, not the same showrunner. Yeah, Ricky Gervais created the original Office. I don't want to be rude to our friends across the Atlantic, but so yeah, I think I would have to cut Parks and Rec. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's fair too, because Parks and Rec, with it being kind of like the was it Mike Shore? He's the one who was Mose in The Office, is the one who which is hilarious. When I found out that Mose was behind the scenes was a genius, I'm like, Dwight's weird brother that just runs like a little robot, and that's that's just so bizarre to me.
It's him and Greg Daniels is the other guy. Yeah.
That guy's genius.
Mike Shore did that. Mike Shore, he did Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So he's a part of a bunch of different comedy shows that have gone on for seasons and seasons. So really funny guy, obviously.
Oh yeah. Well, something that's not funny is your love of Achane, and we'll jump over. To the second one here, which is Off the Achane, which will test your fandom in terms of ranking him with two other running backs. That at least with keep, trade, cut, they were within that same range. And I think they're pretty fair in terms of, I think, ask three different people, they might have three different answers for you. So the three I've got here, and this is in order of best to worst of what Keep, Trade, Cut told us, is Zach Charbonnet, Achane, and a bit of a veteran here in Cam Akers. So these guys are all kind of sandwiched pretty close to one another. So how would you rank these guys?
All right, yeah. So Zach Charbonnet was my RB2 throughout the entire pre-draft process. Really liked everything that he did on tape. He didn't do anything extraordinarily well. He was just a completely balanced running back. I comped him to James Conner because he just kind of does everything well. He didn't do anything great, but sometimes NFL teams don't even want you to do anything great specifically. They just want to be able to trust you, and that's what I think Zach Charbonnet is, and I think that's what the draft capital showed us. Granted, he did go to a bad landing spot, I would say, in Seattle, having to compete with Kenneth Walker. But at the very least, he was the only running back drafted in the second round. To answer your question, I have Achane over Zach Charbonnet in my rookie rankings, and I am not a Cam Akers guy personally. I wasn't a Cam Akers guy when he came out. I thought his underlying metrics weren't very good, and people can make the argument that it was the Florida State offensive line that he just wasn't very good behind, but if you look at his rushing yards over expected, it's not very good throughout his entire college career. So that takes into account how bad the offensive line was, and he still wasn't very good behind it. I think the vision kind of lacks there. And he did come on strong at the end of the last season. But if you look at those games that he did come on strong, there was against 3 bottom 5 run defenses, and then that game where they played the Broncos and the Broncos just quit on the field and they put up like 50 on them. So I'm not buying into the Cam Akers comeback tour, and they drafted Zach Evans there. And I think he's a very talented back, and I think he could definitely push Cam Akers. We're talking about a guy that was persona non grata for like half of the season last year in Los Angeles. So I would keep Devon Achane. I would trade Zach Charbonnet, and I would cut Cam Akers.
Yeah, this draft really almost crushed everyone's hopes somehow. Yeah. I mean, with so many of these landing spots, aside obviously, of course, from Bijan Robinson landing in one of the highest rushing volumes in the NFL, Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm still blown away how early he went. But then certainly once they did that and traded Swift, they were clearly saying, Swift, you have bones like glass. Gibbs, you can do what Swift did, possibly better. And very excited to see what they do there in Detroit. Yeah, Cam Akers is a interesting story, like you're mentioning. Of that was the big bugaboo that people were saying was, oh, Florida State, the O-line is so terrible. And it's interesting when, depending on the prospect, how people like to frame it, where it's not the player's fault, it's everyone around him. So if it's the quarterback, it's like, oh, his weapons are this, it's O-line that. It's like, at a certain point, we have to attribute certain outcomes to the person that we're talking about. And I think you're like you said, you're certainly seeing that that variety of outcome in the NFL. Like you were saying, it was against poor defenses. And I mean, if people just look at it and say, no, he's on the rise, he's about to hit his peak. And I don't know if that's the case.
It's the same kind of narrative that was going on with Rashad Penny, like going into 2022, how he came on late in 2021. But if you looked at who he came on late against, it was against the worst teams in the league. He just happened to have all the volume for like that month stretch, and then came in, played well, but he also played against, again, some of the worst defenses in the league and racked up big points against them. But then when you play like the 49ers, he doesn't do anything. And then the injury happens. And so is the story of Rashad Penny, unfortunately.
Oh, what a bummer. So, well, jumping over to the bonus question, which is, of course, movie related. So my wife and I, we've reclaimed our basement from our toddler. Well, he's 4, about to be 5, so I forget when toddler ends at this point. But we've got all the movie posters down there now, as you know, to go with our pool table, dartboard, added the foosball table as well. The 4 that I have down there, I've got Anchorman, Boondock Saints, Jaws, and Goldfinger. And my wife has, and we actually finally put up the 3rd one for her, it is Mean Girls, Pretty Woman, and then Harry Potter. Oh, Deathly Hallows?
Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, which looks Hogwarts burning down kind of. It looks incredible. So if you had 3 movie posters and no one in your house was going to veto you,
okay,
what would your 3 be?
So it's interesting because I have my favorite movies, but there's movie posters that are cooler probably than the movies themselves. Yeah, I think I would probably just go with the movies that I enjoy the most. Good Will Hunting is my favorite movie. I imagine that poster is probably Matt Damon and Robin Williams sitting on the bench or something like that in the park. That would be a really cool one. The Departed, really like The Departed. Just a great cast, obviously, really good storyline, and everybody plays their part really well. And then I think I have to go Forrest Gump.
Ooh, that's iconic.
Yeah, it's an iconic one. Bob Zemeckis and Tom Hanks, and the movie's so cool. It makes Forrest's storyline go throughout all of these significant points in U.S. history, and it's you kind of get like a comedy, but at the same time you get to really appreciate all these things about American culture for the better part of like half of a century. So really cool.
Yeah, that's one that I feel like it's really stood the test of time, because like you're saying, it's kind of going through time at that point. And I mean, certainly if they were to recreate that now, they'd have, a couple more decades to work with. But it's kind of funny how, even if it's someone watching it when, we'll say wasn't even alive when that movie came out, it is just, so unique. There's not really another movie like it. And obviously, it's Tom Hanks. He's incredible.
The best.
And I would say I don't have the poster, but I do have the DVD, and I would say that the Departed would be a pretty solid one if I remember how it looks. So yeah.
Yeah, The Departed is a great movie. I mean, I obviously you could tell that I'm a Northeast guy from my New Haven pizza love and my Departed movie love and Good Will Hunting and all that stuff. So I think it's one of the best movies out there.
And I will say let's see, I think the only real time I've gotten to spend, I've got to go to Bristol and had went there for, my buddy used to work for ESPN, so we got to go and like tour the campus and that kind of thing. Yeah. And we went, and it was blistering cold and boatload of snow. It was fun to be there, though. I mean, it's a very cool area. We ended up getting to go to, where did we go? I think we came into Boston after that, so we went to see like a Celtics game, that kind of thing. Which is pretty cool. Boston's a cool town too. So Northeast, insanely cold, but I like the area.
Yeah, it's you definitely suffer from that seasonal affective disorder stuff here during the winter months for sure. Yeah.
Hey, shout out to The Office on that reference.
Exactly.
Oh man. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning there, of course, fatherhood and fantasy football on the podcast. Yep. So what would you say in terms of parenting, what's the perfect number of kids? And this is not a trap if there's talks that you have another one coming or anything like that, but just, in your mind, what is kind of like the perfect number to maintain?
Yeah. So you have one, right? So you
one and done.
You and your wife are playing the zone defense on your one toddler. We only have one right now. She just turned 2 about a month and a half ago. Nice. I'm from a family of 4. It was tough growing up with 4 kids. You have to stretch so many things so far. Yeah. I'm of the opinion that it's 2. I would just like a boy and a girl and just be done. My fiance, her number is 3. So we're going to have to flip a coin. Maybe. I don't know what it is that you do in that situation, but we'll figure it out. I do envision myself having at least one more child though, because I just think it would be fun. But I totally get having one to where you can play that zone defense as opposed to man-to-man coverage, and then things get a little messy at that point probably.
Yeah, the joke I always tell, I was with my wife somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but I mean it could have been the grocery store or something like that, and it was a couple and they had one kid, probably 5 or 6, moving around pretty well, not listening obviously. Another kid that was probably say 2 or 3, so walking enough but was sticking by. Then they were holding an infant, probably a year or less than that, and I was just watching it unfold, and I'm like, there's no, like, if something goes wrong here, like someone's left out. Like you got that one running away, that one's probably gonna trip on something. The baby should be fine. Just hold on to the baby. But no, it's so funny just to think of those sort of circumstances. But I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that if they have more than 2, say 3 or 4, and it seems to be the answer is it's more the jump from 1 to 2 is big, but then going more than 2, it's not saying it's not big, but it's more of like, I guess, less of a curve in terms of how the change is.
Yeah, exactly. My fiance's mom is a twin, and her sister had twins for her first born. Ooh. So I was like, how did you handle having 2 babies like at the same time and stuff? And her answer was, well, this is what I was used to. I didn't have any other experience of having kids. This was my experience. I have 2 of them. So this is what I got introduced to, and this is how I had to get my life rolling and stuff like that. I never really thought about it from that perspective, but it makes sense from that explanation.
Yeah, that does. That makes sense, and that's funny that you say that because, I mean, leading up until like the final couple months before my wife gave birth, I continued to joke with her. I was like, we did the ultrasounds. It kept showing one child, and I was like, I think it's just gonna be twins. And I was like, it's the other one's like just perfectly like mimicking the other one in front, and there's a second one in there. She was like, shut up, because I would be saying it in the doctor's office, and the doctor would like look over like, is he an idiot or does he not understand how this works? so my wife had to put up with that, I think, up until probably the final appointment before. But no, twins, man. That's a good point though. I mean, if you don't know any better, that's just like it's just 2 times the learning, and I'm sure they're not one for one the same, but a lot of the things you can take are the same of like, the feeding and the changing and all that. So,
yeah. Yep.
Say, well, Godspeed to you, by the way, whatever number you end up landing on, 2 or 3.
Thank you very much. You too. It's a battle out there every single day. Yeah,
that's right. So what would you say is one, say the most challenging, and two, the most rewarding thing about parenting?
So the most challenging part, and my fiance definitely suffers from this more than I do, is probably the lack of sleep and the you just don't have any space to yourself. Really, you can't just like wander off somewhere and just be by yourself for a little bit, because the kids are like bloodhounds. They're gonna find you. So you can't really hide. I work evenings. My fiance works mornings, so it's tough because she gets up in the morning to go to work, and then she's up with her daughter all night. I at least am with her in the morning, and then I go off to work, and then I come home. Everybody's asleep. I can relax like a little bit, and so it's definitely more of a strain on her for sure, having to deal with all of that, basically around the clock, being with someone, not really ever being like, by yourself, even for like a little bit. So I would say that's the biggest strain as a parent, which you have a kid, so it's not like you're ever going to be without the kid. So, but the biggest rewarding thing is it's just they don't. When you ask people like, hey, like what am I in for? Like having like a kid and stuff, they tell you stuff, and you hear the cliche things and everything like that. But just seeing them develop like every day and just learning something, like I said, my daughter just turned 2 a month ago. She's at the stage now to where every single thing that she sees, it's Daddy, what's that? What is that? Just asking every single thing. We go to the library every week. She picks out a book, flips through every single page, points to every single image on the page. What is that? What is that? What is that? So it's fun, like watching somebody learn all these things for the first time, and like you are their outlet to the world, so it's a big responsibility, obviously, and you don't want to mess up your kid or put any of the stigmas or everything that you've learned in your life onto this brand new human being that doesn't have any of that stuff. So you just try to do the best you can to kind of shepherd them into the next stage of their life and not make the same mistakes that you've made. But it's easier said than done, obviously. It's a big task, but parents are really special people, because you tend to find out that more times than not, they're the most patient people in the world, and the most compassionate too.
Yeah, I've learned that parenting is certainly, it's kind of one of those things where it reveals character, in the sense that, I'm an incredibly patient person in most things in my life, aside from if I'm driving or I now learned dealing with a child. But it's those moments where, like you're saying, of like, you get to see them grow and learn, and when they repeat something back, but they say it in a way where they understand context and they use it correctly. If it's a bad word, that's not a good thing, but it's hilarious at the same time.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. There was, I think the first one, this one wasn't my fault in this moment, at least. My wife and my son and I were driving through a parking lot or something, and someone went to back up pretty abruptly, was not paying attention at all. And I think my wife had said something earlier and had said damn, but in some, like, he didn't say it loud. He was in the car, but didn't seem to remember it. And in that moment, when that happened, he yelled and understood the context of like, but wait, like damn it. And then it was like, all right, well, gotta hope that wears off by Monday for preschool. So
you gotta muffle the laugh, because you can't let them know it's funny, but it is funny.
Oh,
that
man.
kind of thing.
Yeah. And then they're just theatrical, because then if they get around family and that sort of thing, and they'll laugh, they'll be like, I mean, I don't have to deal with the repercussions of this. I'm just gonna laugh at how funny it is he says that. So but no, it's every day is something different, something new, and it is pretty wild too. I don't know if you've experienced this, like, the first time they're staying over, say at the grandparents' house or something like that. And like you pick them up the next morning and it's like, did you actually get taller in the last 12 hours? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. I completely know what you're talking about. We haven't been able to give her for a sleepover yet, but even we've gone on probably like 2-3 date nights probably since she's been born, so not that many.
Yeah.
But yeah, you come back like 4-6 hours later. It's like, oh my god, like what happened? Like you've grown like a full year. Like you have the Benjamin Button disease happening right now. You're a full grown adult now. So
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So, well, I know as you had kind of mentioned of you and your fiance kind of balancing schedules and kind of figuring things out. How does it work in terms of like work-life balance? I mean, balancing everything. So, I mean, it's work, both your works, life stuff. Obviously, you do content creation, so that sort of thing. How does that kind of work for you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely, she definitely puts a lot on her plate to allow me to do stuff like this, which I'm so thankful for,
Mm.
obviously. And I could definitely be better at balancing everything. I don't have, I don't feel comfortable where I am right now, like in the space. And I feel like I have to push
Mm.
like a little bit more to get my work out there, to be noticed, to kind of get that recognition, to then once you're established, you could kind of let your foot off the gas a little bit. Like, if a lot of bigger accounts and stuff, they don't necessarily have to show their work. They could just kind of be on there, just have fun, joke around, be a personality.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm at the point in my content creating experience to where I have that luxury. I think I'm still getting my name kind of out there and showing my work,
Mm.
and that I do know what I'm talking about to some extent. When we all are kind of BSing more or less, but just showing that I do at least have a passion for this, and I want people that read my work to know that, or to at least experience that same feeling that I have towards my work. But yeah, it's I could definitely probably take the foot off the gas a little bit and not be so much into my, because it's tough. Like when you're writing something, sometimes the ideas don't come to you when you're sitting in front of a computer. Sometimes the ideas come to you when you're walking to the fridge and you're going
Yeah.
to get like a drink or something. You got the refrigerator door open. You're like, oh, that's a good idea. And you pull out your phone and you write down what it is you're thinking. And then next thing you know, you're standing at the refrigerator door and the door's been open for 2 minutes and you're writing down all this stuff. And it's like, hey, like, are you a normal human being? Like, what are you doing right now? So it's kind of like psychotic behavior. But at the same time, it's something that I would be doing regardless if I was putting it out on the internet for people to read or not.
Mm.
Um, so I've been trying to kind of reel in, the number of leagues that I'm in, and kind of just enjoying Dynasty and fantasy football stuff in general through just creating content. But then you run into that whole, well, I'm creating content, but am I practicing what I'm preaching? Because if I'm only in like 5-6 leagues, do I really have enough of a sample size to really be able to know what's going on in the Dynasty landscape, more or less? So
Yeah.
it's a give and take, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point too, because yeah, if you think about the reason it would be started in the first place is because yeah, you're involved in playing in these dynasty fantasy leagues, and whatever you're either learning from that or just taking away, or just conversations with people in the league that if they're active enough. I mean, even just in a smaller handful of leagues, not every league is built the same in terms of the amount of people that trade and respond in the off season, who even have the app still on their phone, that sort of thing. So oh yeah, I'd be like, yeah, I sent you a trade. All right, let me download the app real quick. It's like,
I'll get to it in August.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I don't normally put expirations on this, but I might have to put this. I have to let this thing expire because this guy's gonna probably tear his ACL by the time you read this thing. So
Yeah.
but no, it's interesting to speaking with people like in different spots, I guess, in the fantasy space, and seeing how relentless every bit of it is. It's, I don't know that I've spoken to anybody that says something of like in the way of, yeah, I wrote one thing, or I was a guest on one person's podcast and it happened. It's like,
Yeah.
usually the people that are like, yeah, I was grinding for this amount of time. I wasn't really sure that, who saw this or that. This person reached out to me, or after reaching out to this person 10 times, they responded, whoa, it clicked, it got going, they brought me on. It's There's no clear roadmap. It seems like other than hustle, make good relationships, and just do the work.
Do the work. It's all you can really do. You just have to do the work that you think is good work and hope that other people think it's good work as well. It's the only answer to getting anywhere in any walk of life, really.
Definitely. Yeah. It's very humbling, but again, also very rewarding as it's meeting more people in the space and, getting a chance to, whether either being on other people's podcasts or getting to I just got into writing like a month or so ago, like getting into different mediums of, I joke to my wife, like the only thing I read is the back of a cereal box. Like I'm not a writer by any means, but I know it's something that's very critical in the space, and also another way to kind of like flesh out ideas. Because if you think about if it's writing scripts for something like this, it's all right. Well, how was that script developed? It was writing, and it was how do those ideas come together? So it's just one piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, well, I guess jumping into that real experience that you're talking about, as a Steelers fan, what did you think of their 2023 draft?
Yeah, we got the con artist Omar Khan leading the front office now for his first draft. It was pretty great. I gotta give him all the credit in the world. If you know anything about the Steelers, they typically aren't aggressive in the draft, and they'll just kind of draft where their picks are. They'll probably draft a linebacker, or they'll draft like an undersized corner that won't be able to do anything. And then it's kind of like, how are the Steelers competitive every year when more or less they don't really draft anything but linebackers and receivers? It's the only two positions that they draft with any kind of regularity and any kind of decent hit rate. But I think they really addressed Broderick Jones. I love the pick. I think he's got such an untapped ceiling, obviously at offensive tackle, great athlete, big guy. Like, I think it's the perfect kind of guy that could be the anchor for the offensive line that we really need. And then we kind of attacked the interior offensive line during the off season with a couple of free agent signings, which was great. But yeah, overall, I think they really did a good job. Joey Porter Jr., legacy pick for the Steelers, perfect meatball pick for all Steelers Nation to just get behind and be like, yeah, we got our guy, Joey Porter Jr. I don't know if he's going to be good or not. I mean, he's got lanky arms, so I like the reach that he has. He's very atypical to the normal Steelers corner. They play a lot of bump and run, a lot of stockier corners at like 5'10", like 200, to where we play in a division now where we got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Amari Cooper and all these guys that it's like, well, somebody's got to cover these guys. So hopefully we can get somebody with some athletic ability, and Joey Porter was more athletic at the combine than people thought he was going to be. Got a couple of Wisconsin guys and Nate Herbig and the defensive tackle Keanu Benton. I didn't know how I felt about that pick because at the time Cam Smith was on the board, corner from South Carolina that got drafted by Miami that I really wanted. I was like, what? Let's just double tap corner right now. Let's just have two good young corners, and worst case scenario, maybe one of them hit and it would be even better. But ideally both of them hit, but worst case scenario, one of them does. And we still at least have a guy going forward, which we haven't really been able to develop. Lost Cam Sutton in free agency to Detroit. So I have mixed feelings about the direction of the team with Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator. I don't really think that he's a good offensive coordinator at this point. So I would like him to not be the offensive coordinator anymore. Unfortunately, with Kenny Pickett and the rookie deal, now you're talking about Kenny Pickett going into year 2. He's supposed to make that jump, and then year 3 is the big jump. But if you fire the offensive coordinator in year 3, okay, well, now Kenny Pickett has to learn a whole new offense, and then his 5th-year option comes up. And I could just kind of see the headlines kind of developing. Luckily for you, in your Carolina Panthers, you have the first overall pick, Bryce Young. I'm so excited to see Bryce Young play in the NFL. I think he's going to be great. I think he goes to a pretty decent situation, actually, in Carolina. A lot of people want to crap on Carolina, saying that they're not a good situation. Yeah, they have Adam Thielen and DJ Chark and, Terrace Marshall. These guys are either past their prime or haven't really done anything of note in the NFL, but they're pros. They've been able to stay around in the NFL for a long time. Adam Thielen, at least. But I'm excited. Miles Sanders comes in too. Frank Reich at head coach, and you got Josh McCown there. So it's a room with a lot of guys that have NFL experience that have been around quarterbacks that have developed. So I'm excited for Bryce Young too. I know you didn't ask me about the Panthers, but I just wanted to get them in there.
No, I appreciate it. I will say one thing about the Steelers that I found so confusing with. I don't know who likes Matt Canada. Like, it seems like the only person that likes him is the person that can fire him. But everyone else, I've never spoken to a Steelers fan that said he's our, like, I believe in him. He can figure this thing out. He can maximize the talent on offense. And watching the games, I mean, Kenny Pickett, he wasn't someone I was hugely high on. And I know that quarterback class was an anomaly in terms of how the talent wasn't quite there. But I mean, he does seem like a good, stable guy that can work within a system.
Yep.
And if you don't give him the right system, then I guess that kind of all goes to crap. But I really hope that he can make that jump. And I mean, there are some good weapons there, like you mentioned about. I mean, that's a wide receiver factory in Pittsburgh. It's unbelievable how year over year they just keep these guys coming. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I wasn't very in on Kenny Pickett either during the draft last year, and then all that smoke coming out that the Steelers really liked Malik Willis at the time. Hey, hand up. I thought Malik Willis would be kind of fun playing quarterback for the Steelers. It's clearly not a player that we've had at the quarterback position over the last 2 decades. Before that, probably would have to go back to Cordell Stewart to kind of see anything of that athletic skill set, more or less. I think they probably made the right call in terms of if they had to draft a quarterback last year, Kenny Pickett was the guy. What's the ceiling for Kenny Pickett though? Kirk Cousins? Like, could he beat Kirk Cousins potentially? Like, if he's like Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, the rest of the team has to be fantastic around him, which they did a good job in this draft to get some pieces to make the team better overall. But in the division that we play in and the conference as a whole, I definitely would say that we are not in the top 8 of quarterbacks in the conference, which I have a hard time seeing how we would be competitive in a conference with that kind of quarterback talent. And we're not even in the same stratosphere as those guys. So Kenny Pickett needs to do a lot to mature and get better. Like you said, we do have some weapons. Drafted Darnell Washington too. I forgot to talk about him, but hopefully he could kind of help out the run game to where we don't have to put all that pressure on Kenny Pickett to throw the ball 35 times a game because we can't run. I would be happy to see them use George Pickens in a more imaginative way. They kind of just have him run comebacks and streaks. That's pretty much it. So, and then people take his reception perception and oh, he's terrible. It's well, he doesn't get really asked to do anything because Deontay Johnson runs every single slant and comeback and out route and in route under the sun, and he gets pelted with targets every single game. But that's just people looking at advanced numbers and not really watching what's going on in the Steelers game, game to game, really. Freiermuth, he's good. I don't know what his fantasy relevance is going to be moving forward, but we'll see. Like you said, we have the weapons. Najee, I love Najee. I think it's a lot of crap for no reason, really. I think he's a bell cow running back, and in today's NFL, how many bell cows are there? You can count them on one hand, really, and Najee's definitely one of them. He's built that way, so I'm excited about Najee this season. I think he definitely bounces back, and if you looked at him from week 8 on, he was RB7 in points per game, so after that foot injury kind of healed over a little bit from training camp, he got a lot better as the season went on, but again, people just see the 3.9 yards per carry, and they're like, Najee Harris is inefficient, he sucks. I don't think it's as simple as saying that and looking at his numbers. I think you have to watch him play a little bit too.
Yeah, and I feel fair or not, I know he was an older prospect coming out, so it seemed like anyone was looking for if he has any sort of down string of games or anything, regardless of what the reason. Obviously, with the Linsfring injuries, not a joke by any means. That happened, and it didn't come out initially. I think that was the injury, but you think you could kind of tell something wasn't right. And even once that came out that was the injury and he was playing through it, it still didn't really seem like he got the grace that I feel like he really deserved in terms of what he battled through. Jalen Warren obviously filled in admirably, kind of coming out of nowhere, which is great. And yeah, the George Pickens hate. He's someone who he makes the highlight catches, but like you said, it's because he kind of has to. Like he could not make them, and then they talk about separation, all that. It's like, well, then he just wouldn't catch the ball. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Matt Canada, that was you. We're talking to you right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Matt Canada, please go anywhere else. Do anything else. Go back to Maryland. Do whatever you got to do. Show up there in the straw hat with the whistle around your neck. Start blowing it, telling the kids to run laps. Do whatever you got to do. Just don't do it in Pittsburgh. It'd be great. Fantastic. If you look at George Pickens, though, if you look at his rookie numbers, he has virtually the same splits as DeAndre Hopkins as a rookie. And I definitely don't remember DeAndre Hopkins ever being, oh, well, DeAndre Hopkins, he can't get any work outside of the alpha receiver in Houston with Andre Johnson. I don't remember that narrative ever happening because he was a first-round pick. So George Pickens, I think, is perfectly fine. If we could get an offense, like I said, that uses him a little more imaginatively and not just have him run the same two routes over and over again, that'd be great. But the jury is still out. We're talking about a guy that when he was like 18 years old in the SEC, he catches 12 balls for 175 yards and a touchdown in a bowl game. Like the guy is like that. Like he's that good. We just got to find a way to use him a little bit better than a DJ Chark or something like that. Just having him run streaks every single play or comeback routes.
Yeah, and circling back, I know you mentioned the Panthers a little bit. I cannot think of a time that the Panthers had this good of a coaching staff. Honestly, this offseason, I was less concerned with who the 101 was going to be and more concerned with just like watching all of these different. It's not just the head coach, it's not just the coordinators, it's the position coaches, it's every bit of it. Having Caldwell on the staff too, like the level of experience, whether it be as players, as coaches. The Deuce Staley coming in, which I was excited to see. I figured they were going to actually bring back Deonta Foreman once I saw Staley come in as a Jamal Williams-esque type thing. But, I mean, Miles Sanders, he's no slouch at all, and very excited to see what that offense looks like. The defense, I already felt good about it, and I already feel confident in saying that they play in either the worst or second worst division in the NFL. And, I mean, I guess it's them versus the Saints. I don't feel great about Desmond Ridder. I think Alec Pierce made him look good in college. So that's the hate that I'm going to put on that guy. But, I mean, he's got weapons. We'll see how that goes. The Buccaneers, of course, are now Baker Mayfield led. So,
yeah, it's crazy. Like people are counting Carolina out because, I mean, the stigma always comes with the first overall pick team that they're bad. They traded into it, obviously, but they're definitely a dark horse team to win that division. Like, you're not asking for a ton. What are you asking to be? 8-1 might get it done. Like if you're just 500, like you could probably win the division because of the lack of just good talent in the division overall. But yeah, I think like you said, I forgot that Caldwell was there. I think I remember hearing that at some point, but I just completely forgot to mention it. Deuce Staley, obviously, like you said, very respected running back coach in the NFL. He's also there. So they have a really, really good coaching staff to put around a young quarterback and kind of show him the ropes of how to play in the NFL. And like you said, they have vets all around him too on that offense. And the offensive line's gotten a little bit better over the last year too. Hopefully Ike Mekwano could take, that even next further step to where we're talking about him as one of the best tackles in football. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about Bryce Young. I think he went to a far better scenario than CJ Stroud went to. So
yep.
Good. Thankful for that. Thankful that we're going to get to see Bryce Young hopefully play some competitive football this season. That'd be really great.
Absolutely. And jumping back, this is the finale here, the final question. I know we were talking about content creation, and I sometimes think about talking to people. What is the one thing that's you think is really important to share with somebody just getting started? And I've kind of learned that is important for sure, but what is maybe the number one thing not to do as an up-and-coming content creator? Something you've learned that maybe you tried and that wasn't the thing, or something that you've learned to just avoid and that's not really helpful to you in your journey of growth?
Yeah, so I think one mistake that people make, especially like through social media and stuff, is they take everything really personally. So if you put out a piece of content, granted, you're always going to have some random troll that's an egg with, his name is going to be like Trill 857329495. It's going to be like 20 numbers after it. It's going to be an egg, and they're going to just write "this sucks" or like "you're an idiot." Who cares? Like they have zero followers. It's clearly somebody that's very miserable in their own life. And that's just what I would tell people that are getting into the content creation business, especially in the fantasy football space, from what I've been told by my mentors and people that I respect in this space, is you never know who's going to see something that you write. So I would never write something on the internet that I wouldn't say to someone in person. I think that's a good rule of thumb, that, hey, like, don't just be a tough guy or be, super rude and mean to somebody just because you have the anonymity of sitting behind a screen. I don't think that that's the way that you should interact with people. I don't think that's how they would want to be interacted with. So I would say you never know who's going to be watching what you're doing. And I would always caution to represent yourself the most professionally that you possibly can, because like you were talking about earlier, you never know when your time is going to come and when your next big opportunity can happen. And you don't want it to be, absconded because you said something to some troll or to some other content creator that's friends with this content creator that writes for this company, because people remember. It's not a super big industry. Yes, it's big in market cap, I suppose, but the industry, more or less, everybody knows each other. So I definitely would caution against that, and just be who you are in person. And if who you are in person is a jerk, then I don't know, be a better person. That's probably the best advice that I could give you. But yeah, I think that's what I live by. I wouldn't say anything online that you're not willing to say to somebody in person, and I would keep it constructive. I wouldn't be super disrespectful to people.
Yeah, that's one thing that I know, social media can get to some people in terms of, everything being taken as, if you have this incredibly well thought out, whether it's your film grinder and you've watched hours of film on this guy, or you've crunched a bunch of analytics and kind of concocted something to kind of, present it and kind of show whatever your perspective is on it. And after all that work, all that time, then someone just, responds with something just simple like, "you're an idiot." It's like, yeah. I think that stuff's hilarious, and not in the sense of like, it's funny that they would say that, but like if someone would say it to me, that is so hilarious to me. Only because, like you said, there are a lot of people that are in the fantasy space, but again, it kind of gets more consolidated when you think of, I guess, I don't want to say the cream of the crop, because I think that sounds a bit odd in this scenario, but the people that are maybe more impactful have that higher following, higher view count. Again, there's only so many like bigger companies that are kind of within the space. And yeah, I've heard before that, say your Twitter or social media or what have you is kind of like your resume in a way. It's not just say whatever you're writing that you're retweeting to have people come check out, but yeah, it is. Yeah. How do you interact with other people that are disagreeing with you? How do you interact with people that are in the space that are just, having a discourse with you on whatever? So it's, it seems big. I remember the first day I got onto Twitter, I'd been off Twitter for like a decade, and me getting onto Twitter was just for fantasy football stuff with the podcast. The first day I got on, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I just kept when I kept updating my feed, I'm like, I don't really know how anybody keeps up with this. This is exhausting. And that was before I even followed too many people. I kept going with it, and I'm like, I'm just going to set my phone down. I'm just going to take a beat. Yeah, just take an hour. So, there's no shortage of information, of perspectives, of hot takes, of cold takes, of, criticisms. But it's definitely a good group of people that, a lot of the people I've, gotten the chance to meet are, pretty incredible, genuine people, helpful. You would think, certain people, whether it's followings or, what they have going on in their lives, so many people are so gracious to take the time to come onto a podcast or just to have a conversation about behind the scenes type stuff. So it's a pretty great community.
Yeah, that's what I found as well, that if you're willing to just reach out to people, I would say 90% of the people that I've reached out to have gotten back to me at the very least, or even better, have had an actual conversation with me about something, which I really appreciate, obviously. But in the fantasy football space, people, people are too sensitive sometimes. Like you're never going to be 100% right. It's never going to happen. Doesn't matter how many decimal points you put in your model. Doesn't matter how many times you watch film, because at the end of the day, the guy could just go somewhere to where he's not used the right way. You're not in the coaching room. It is what it is. You could just try to learn from your mistakes and try to fine tune your process as much as you can. But where it's a business where you're trying to predict the future. People cannot do that. It's not possible to do it 100% accurate. So I would just say, just relax, just have fun. That's what we're all here to do. And if you could make content that's compelling and that people appreciate and like, then even better. Yep.
I could not agree more. And I think this episode was pretty compelling. So I do want to say I appreciate that, JC.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Like I said, it's a super fun topic to be able to, there's a lot of guys on the planet Earth that are fathers, and there's a lot of guys on Earth that enjoy fantasy football. Guys and girls enjoy fantasy football, but I think it's a really fun show that kind of allows you to see who people are outside of talking football, which I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. And I will also be giving you the opportunity as the guest to get the final word, as that is always the case. And I do want to say it can be a shout out, it can be a quote, it can be a cheers. I've put this one in. I don't think it's been used. It can be an insult, but as we mentioned, we want to be positive in the space, so maybe don't use that one.
No, I just want to thank my fiance that allows me to do this stuff as a hobby, and kind of takes on that role of being like 80% caregiver to our daughter, to where I get like the 20%, and I kind of just fill in the cracks where they may be. But she's the real hero. I after I saw her give birth, I mean, it's kind of like, I can't believe that we're the same like species, like more or less, like, because they're absolute warriors. And if I got a paper cut, I would be like, oh, my finger hurts. But God bless women for being able to do what they do. So just want to thank her.
I'll say I love it. Everyone has a better half, and I told the same thing to my wife after watching that experience. She was like, "Yeah, what were you thinking?" I was like, "It was awesome." I was like, "It is like, you can go to the birthing classes and read anything, and like you understand the premise of it and how it's going to happen, but until you're there, it's like, no, it is literally incredible. Like it is it's unlike anything else."
Yeah. I got super emotional. Yeah. I wasn't expecting to, I guess you never really know what's going to happen until you're in that scenario. But yeah, I got way more emotional than I would have imagined when we walked in to the hospital, obviously. But yeah, it's quite literally the miracle of life.
So our lives changed since then, and and I guess we'll find out how many new additions you'll have in your household, and I won't tell her. But
she might listen to this, but maybe I won't give her the YouTube link. I don't know.
There you go. Exactly. I'll give you a unique cut where I just cut at the end of it that you said that.
Yes, perfect, great.
Oh man, JC, I really appreciate you coming on and talking fatherhood, fantasy football, and have a good one.
Thank you very much for having me, Chew. See you later.
See you, buddy.